Success, prosperity, and happiness are your birthright. Wealth is created mentally first. The stream of plenty will not flow toward the doubting thought. Holding the poverty thought keeps a person in touch with poverty-producing conditions. No man has a right, unless he cannot help himself, to remain where he will be constantly subjected to the cramping, ambitious, blighting influences and great temptations of poverty. His self-respect demands that he should get out of such an environment. It is his duty to put himself in a position of dignity and independence where he will not be liable at any moment to be a burden to his friends in case of sickness or other emergencies, or where those depending on him may suffer. Almost every wealthy man will tell you that his greatest satisfaction and happiest days were when he was emerging from poverty into a competency. When he first felt the tonic from the swelling of his small savings towards the stream of fortune and knew that want would no longer dog his steps, it was then he began to see ahead of him leisure, self-development, self-culture, or perhaps study and travel, and to feel that those whom he loved would be lifted from the clutches of poverty. Comforts were taking the place of stern necessities and blunting drudgery, and he realized that he had the power to lift himself above himself. Then he felt the tonic of growth, the little circle about him expanding into a larger sphere, broadening into a wider horizon. There are plenty of evidences that we are made for grand things, sublime things, for abundance, and not for poverty. Lack and want do not fit man's divine nature. The trouble is that most do not have half enough faith in the good that is in store for us. We do not dare fling out our whole soul desire to follow the leading of our divine hunger and ask without stint for the abundance that is our birthright. We ask little things and we expect little things, pinching our desires and limiting our supply. Not daring to ask to the full of our soul's desire, we do not open our minds sufficiently to allow a great inflow of good things. Our mentality is so restricted, our self-expression so repressed, that we think in terms of limitation. We do not throw out our soul's desire with that abundant faith which trusts implicitly and which receives accordingly. The power that made and sustains us gives liberally, abundantly, not stingily, to everybody and everything. There is no restriction, no limitation, no loss to anybody from this abundant giving. We are not dealing with a Creator who is impoverished by granting our requests. It is its nature to give, to flood us with our heart's desires. The rose does not ask the sun for only a tiny bit of its light and heat, for it is the sun's nature to throw it out to everything which will absorb it and drink it in. The candle loses nothing of its light by lighting another candle. We do not lose, but increase our capacity for friendship by being friendly, by giving abundantly of our love. One of the greatest secrets of life is to learn how to transfer the full current of divine force to ourselves and how to use this force effectively. If man can find this law of divine transference, he will multiply his efficiency 1,000,000 times over, because he will then be a co-operator, co-creator with divinity on a scale of which he has never before dreamed. When we recognize that everything comes from the great infinite supply and that it flows to us freely, when we get into perfect tune with the infinite, when the brute has been educated out of us, and dishonesty, selfishness, impurity burned out of us, we will see good without these scales, which make us blind to good. We will see good, and we will know good, for only the pure in heart can see good. When unfairness, a desire to take advantage of our brothers and sisters, is removed from our lives, we shall get so close that all of the good things in the universe will flow to us spontaneously. The trouble is that we restrict the inflow by wrong acts, wrong thoughts. Every vicious deed is an opaque veil, another film over our eyes so that we cannot see good. Every wrong step separates us. When we learn the art of seeing opulently instead of stingily, we learn to think without limits, how not to cramp ourselves by our limiting thought. We will find that the thing we are seeking is seeking us and that it will meet us halfway. Do not always apologize for your lack. Every time you say that you have nothing to wear, that you never have the things that other people have, that you never go anywhere or do things that other people do, you are simply etching the black picture deeper and deeper. As long as you recite these unfortunate details and dwell upon your disagreeable experiences, your mentality will not attract the thing you are after, will not bring that which will remedy your hard conditions. The mental attitude, the mental picturing, must correspond with the reality we seek. Prosperity begins in the mind and is impossible with a mental attitude which is hostile to it. We cannot attract opulence mentally by a poverty-stricken attitude which is driving away what we long for. It is fatal to work for one thing and to expect something else. No matter how much one may long for prosperity, a miserable, poverty-stricken mental attitude will close all the avenues to it. The weaving of the web is bound to follow the pattern. Opulence and prosperity cannot come in through poverty thought channels. They must be created mentally first. We must think prosperity before we can come to it. How many take it for granted that there are plenty of good things in this world for others? Comforts, luxuries, fine houses, good clothes, opportunity for travel, leisure, but not for them. They settle down into the conviction that these things do not belong to them, but are for those in a very different class. But why are you in a different class? Simply because you think yourself into another class? Think yourself into inferiority? Because you place your limits for yourself? You can put up bars between yourself and plenty. You can cut off abundance, make the law of supply inoperative for you by shutting your mind to it. And by what law can you expect to get what you believe you cannot get? By what philosophy can you obtain the good things of the world when you are thoroughly convinced they are not for you? The limitation is in ourselves and not in the Creator. We are designed of the good things of the universe because they are fashioned for us. If we do not take them, it is because we limit ourselves. One of the greatest curses of the world is the belief in the necessity of poverty. Most people have a strong conviction that some must necessarily be poor, that they were made to be poor. But there is no poverty, no want, no lack in the Creator's plan for man. The earth is full of resources which we have scarcely yet touched. We have been poor in the very midst of abundance, simply because of our own blighting, limiting thought. Know that thoughts are things, that they are incorporated into the life and form a part of the character, and that if we harbor the fear thought, the lack thought, if we are afraid of poverty, of coming to want, this poverty thought, fear thought incorporates itself in the very life texture and makes us the magnet to attract more poverty like itself. It was not intended that we should have such a hard time with our living, that we should just manage to squeeze along, to get together a few comforts, to spend about all of our time making a living instead of making a life. The life abundant, full, free, beautiful was intended for us. If we were absolutely normal, our living and getting would be a mere incident to our life making. The great ambition of the race would be to develop a superb type of manhood, a beautiful, magnificent womanhood, man-making, man-building, instead of dollar-making as now. Resolve that you will turn your back on the poverty idea and that you will vigorously expect prosperity, that you will hold tenaciously the thought of abundance, the opulent ideal, which is appropriate to your nature, that you will try to live in the realization of plenty to actually feel rich, opulent. This will help you to attain what you long for. There is a creative force and intense desire. The fact is, we live in our own worlds. We are creations of our own thought. Each builds his own world by his thought habit. He can surround himself with an atmosphere of abundance or of lack, of plenty or of want. We were not made to grovel, but to aspire, to look up, not down. We were not made to pinch along in poverty, but for larger, grander things. Nothing is too good or beautiful for human beings. Nothing too grand, too sublime, too magnificent for us to enjoy. It is the poverty attitude, the narrowness of our thought that has limited us. If we had a larger and grander conception of life, of our birthright, if, instead of whining, crawling, grumbling, sneaking, and apologizing, we were to stand erect and claim our kingship, demand our rich inheritance, the inheritance which is an abundance of all that is good and beautiful and true, we should live far completer, fuller lives. We should not be so poverty-stricken, but for the narrowness of our faith, the unkindness of our conception of our birthright. There are plenty of evidences in man's construction and environment that he was made for infinitely grander and more superb things than even the most fortunate of men now possess and enjoy. Why should we not expect great, grand things if we are made in the image of our Creator? We are the heirs of all that is beautiful and opulent in the universe. The very holding of the mind open toward all the good things of the world, expecting and appreciating them, will have everything to do with obtaining them. There is something wrong when multitudes of the sons and daughters who have inherited all the good things of the universe starve on the very shores of the stream of plenty, of opulence unspeakable, which flows past their very doors and which carries infinite supply. Our circumstances in life, our financial condition, our poverty, our wealth, our friends, our lack of them, our condition of harmony or discord, are all very largely the offspring of our thought. If our mental attitude has been one of want, if we have dwelt upon lack, our environment will correspond. If our thinking has been open, generous, and broad, if we have thought in terms of abundance, prosperity, and have made a relative effort to realize these conditions, our environment will tend to correspond. Everything we get in life comes through the gateway of our thought and resembles its qualities. If that is pinched, stingy, mean, what flows to us will be like it. When we see people who have been for years in a poverty-stricken condition, unless there has been much ill health or very unusual misfortune, we know that somebody has been in a wrong mental attitude. We should very likely find the head of the house a complainer against fate for the sparseness of his supply, the littleness of his inflow. If you are dissatisfied with your condition, if you feel that life has been hard and cruel, if you're a complainer, you'll probably find that whatever your condition may be in your home or business or social life, it is the legitimate offspring of your own thought, your own ideals, and that you have nobody to blame but yourself. Right thinking will produce right living, clean thinking a clean life, and a prosperous, generous thought followed up by intelligent endeavor to make your thoughts and your ideals real will produce corresponding results. If we learn to trust implicitly the great dispenser of all good, the source of infinite supply, the power which brings seed time and harvest, the power which feeds, which supplies, the power which bids us to take no thought of tomorrow, but consider the lilies, how they grow, and do our level best to improve our condition, we will never know what want is. There is nothing which the human race lacks so much as unquestioned, implicit confidence in the divine source of all supply. We ought to stand in the same relation to the infinite source as the child does to its parents. The child does not say, "I do not dare eat this food for fear that I may not get any more." It takes everything with absolute confidence and assurance that all it needs will be supplied, that there is plenty more where these things came from. We do not have half good enough opinions of our possibilities. Do not expect half enough of ourselves. We do not demand the abundance which belongs to us, hence the leanness, the lack of fullness, the incompleteness of our lives. We do not demand royally enough. We are content with too little of the things worthwhile. It was intended that we should live the abundant life, that we should have plenty of everything that is good for us. No one was meant to live in poverty and wretchedness. The lack of anything that is desirable is not natural to the constitution of any human being. Hold the thought that you are one with what you want, that you are in tune with it, so as to attract it. Keep your mind vigorously concentrated upon it. Never doubt your ability to get what you're after, and you will get it. Poverty is often a mental disease. If you are suffering from it, if you are a victim of it, you'll be surprised to see how quickly your condition will improve when you change your mental attitude and, instead of holding the miserable, shriveled, limited poverty image, turn about and face towards the abundance and plenty, towards freedom and happiness. Success comes through a perfectly scientific mental process. The man who becomes prosperous believes that he's going to be prosperous. He has faith in his ability to make money. He does not start out with his mind filled with doubts and fears, and all the time talk poverty and think poverty. He turns his face towards the thing he is trying for and is determined to get it, and will not admit its opposite picture in his mind. There are multitudes of poor people who are half satisfied to remain in poverty and who have ceased to make a desperate struggle to rise out of it. They may work hard, but they have lost the hope, the expectation of getting an independence. Many people keep themselves poor by fear of poverty, allowing themselves to dwell upon the possibility of coming to want, of not having enough to live, by allowing themselves to dwell upon conditions of poverty. The minds of the children in many families are saturated with the poverty thought. They hear it from morning till night. They see poverty-stricken conditions everywhere. They hear everybody talking about limitation, lack. Everything about them suggests poverty. Is it any wonder that children brought up in such an atmosphere repeat the poverty-stricken conditions of their parents and environment? Did you ever think that your fear of poverty, your constant worry about making ends meet, your fear of that awful, rainy day, not only makes you unhappy, but actually disqualifies you from putting yourself in a better financial condition? You are simply adding to a load which is already too heavy for you. No matter how black the outlook or how iron your environment, positively refuse to see anything that is unfavorable to you, any condition which tends to enslave you and to keep you from expressing the best that is in you. By what philosophy can you expect poverty thoughts, thoughts of lack and want to produce prosperity? Your condition will correspond to your attitude and ideals. These form the patterns which are woven into the life web. If they are poverty-stricken, your life condition will correspond. We tend to get what we expect, and if we expect nothing, we get nothing. The stream cannot rise higher than its fountainhead. No one can become prosperous when he expects or half expects to remain poor. The man who is bound to win believes he is going to be prosperous. He starts out with the understanding with himself that he is going to be a successful man, a winner, and not a loser. He does not say to himself all the time, "What's the use?" A man will never get anywhere with such ideals. Everybody ought to stand erect with face towards the sun of hope and prosperity. Success and happiness are the inalienable rights of every human being. Every achievement has its origin in the mind. Every structure is first a mental structure. The building is first completed in all its details in the architect's mind. The contractor merely puts the stones, the brick, and other material around the idea. We are all architects. Everything we do in life is preceded by some sort of plan. Some people would like to make money, but they keep their minds so pinched, so closed, that they are not in a condition to receive abundance. The man who expects prosperity is constantly creating money in his mind, building his financial structure mentally. There must be a mental picture of prosperity first. The building around it is comparatively easy. It does not take a great man to place the material around the idea, to create the idea, the mental picture. This is not idle dreaming, it is brain building, mental planning, mental construction. We must conquer inward mental poverty before we can conquer outward poverty. True prosperity is the inward consciousness of spiritual opulence, wholeness, completeness, the consciousness of oneness with the very source of abundance, infinite supply, the consciousness of possessing an abundance of all that is good for us, a wealth of personality of character that no disaster on land or sea could destroy.